Rising upon the banks of the mighty Odai, the city of Balmora stands as Vardenfell's second city, the seat of Great House Hlaalu, a merchant city where the flow of goods is the very lifeblood of commerce. From the cascading waterfalls that feed the Odai to the rising towers of the Hlaalu, the river provides the highway of trade that the city needs to survive. And that mighty Odai River and the city of Balmora are the subjects of today's More the Day. For today we're showcasing the massive and ambitious combined city and landscape overhaul mod, Odai, Lifeblood of Balmora by Tabaton Claws. Now, there have been many mods that have sought to overhaul and expand Morrowind's second city, with more coming out every year. Back in 2017, we did a comparison video showcasing the, at the time, 12 major overhauls and expansions for Balmora. That video ended up being obsolete after just 4 days, when yet another Balmora overhaul was released. I mean, good grief, the bloody timing! But since 2017, there have been another 14 or so major overhauls released for Balmora, an average of 2 a year, bringing the total number of major Balmora city overhauls and expansions to 27. No other city from Morrowind has even half that number of options. It is Morrowind's most modded city. But out of all those mods, none have ever really addressed the Odai itself. For Balmora has historically had a bit of a problem. It's a river city without a proper river. For in vanilla Morrowind, the Odai could best be classified as a creek. It had neither the width nor the depth to properly serve as a realistic waterway for commerce, or really for anything else. I mean, it's not even deep enough for fishing. Fish could not survive in the Odai. And unlike most actual rivers, it also had no source, just a weird little pond outside the city gates. Now, I am aware that there's a video here on YouTube going into Morrowind's issues with rivers. I haven't personally seen it, but as someone who grew up in St. Louis between the mighty Mississippi and Missouri rivers, I have to admit that what Morrowind calls rivers are, just a bit of a disappointment. But the Odai is a disappointment no longer, for Odai Lifeblood of Balmora does what few mods have attempted to do before, and vastly expands the river itself, giving it greater depth and width to allow for the passing of cargo ships, along with a new dock in Balmora where goods can be loaded and shipped down the Odai. And instead of a spontaneously appearing waterway, the Odai River now has a proper source, with massive cascading waterfalls coming down from the mountains around Caldera to form the base of the Odai River, a more natural and beautiful source for the mighty Odai, with some truly gorgeous verticality. I dare say the Odai has never been more scenic. The landscape changes here are simply breathtaking, and Lifeblood of Balmora is arguably one of the most transformative landscape overhauls of 2024. But, of course, the landscape elements are but one part of this rather massive mod, for the city of Balmora itself has also been overhauled and expanded, with elements from dozens of other mods that have been integrated for what just may well be one of the ultimate Balmora overhauls to date. Now, much like Tabaton Claws' other mods, like Vivec God the City, and Sheogorath Groves of the North, Odai Lifeblood of Balmora is Well, it's a bit of a mod compilation, containing and combining elements from dozens of mods into a single cohesive whole, with lots of patches, add-ons, and compatibility support for just a ton of other mods, making this not just one of the biggest overhauls for Bowmora, but also one of the most compatible. At least, comparatively speaking, most major overhauls like this don't always have the best track record when it comes to compatibility. That said, this does still have plenty of mod conflicts, but more on that later. The actual overhaul of Bowmora includes changes to virtually every part of the city, with lots of expansions with new buildings, a new waterfront district, and plenty of new details, utilizing elements from dozens of other Bowmora mods. This overhaul is based primarily on Vitruvian Guar's Bowmora: The City of Contrasts, which is itself a compilation mod, utilizing elements from Bowmora Waterworks, Delera Bowmora, Beautiful Cities of Morrowind, and Izzy Cities Bowmora. Tappenden Claws has used Bowmora: The City of Contrasts as a base, and included elements from just a number of other mods on top, such as inspiration from Bowmora Docks District by Corpus Wavu, Callanta's Do You Get to the High Town Very Often, and incorporation of mods like Shabby Bowmora Labour Town by Dim Nuisance and Lucifer, Obe Bowmora Redecorated by Lucifer, Stoneflower House by Innie, and there's even elements of Morrowind Rebirth here. The result is one of the biggest compilations of Bowmora overhauls to date, edited and made to provide a seamless new Bowmora experience, with automatic compatibility support for mods like Bowmora Tabori Dun by Marcondes and Bell Towers, both of which you can see I'm using here in my showcase. Focusing on the changes made to each of Bowmora's districts, we'll begin with the docks. For Bowmora now includes an actual harbour for small and mid-sized vessels. Inspired by the aforementioned Bowmora Docks district, this transforms that dinky little island in vanilla Morrowind into a central circular platform with cargo cranes and space for a variety of craft, with a central warehouse to store goods, either being brought in or going down the Odoi. Finally, just some visible signs of industry in what is, again, just the second largest city on Vardenfell. But following this, we have the newly overhauled Canal District, with obvious integration of Bowmora Waterworks, transforming Bowmora's central waterway into a tiered layer of lower covered walkways and upper streets and bridges, aligned with the occasional market stall. This includes, obviously, a new sewer complex, as originally seen with Bowmora Waterworks, just connecting the shops and residences of Bowmora to a central series of tunnels, with just a few surprises awaiting would-be adventurers in the dock. The market district has noticeably been expanded, with new Gore stables, courtesy of Random Powell, an optional add-on for various outdoor market stalls, courtesy of Vitruvian Gore's Bowmora: City of Contrasts, a new tavern, which is actually from Morrowind Rebirth. You might have seen it before in some of our previous showcase videos for Rebirth, and you can just briefly see the interior here. And there's also a new house for one of the previously unhoused NPCs in Bowmora. I think that might be from Beautiful Cities of Morrowind, but it may have also just been originally inspired by more detailed places, which also adds a NPC home just in this same general vicinity. Moving on, the Manor District is now walled off from the rest of the city, with a new central tower for the Hlaalu Council Manor, adding just a lovely vista of verticality that you might recognise from Callanta's Do You Get to the High Town Very Often. As well as just a number of rich details, like there's a gazebo, a statue of Revor, gardens and monuments and fountains, and it is just a beautiful looking district. And also, the Maragtong Guildhall now has a new, unique domed model, inspired by Marne de Boeuf. Finally, just traveling across the river to Labour Town, you'll notice Balmora's poorest district is now just noticeably denser, with buildings closely packed together, narrow streets giving you an impressive feeling of urban blight, and a simply beautiful layer of vertical density that makes my verticality-obsessed heart jump for joy. Obviously, there's a few mods that have been merged in here, from Wolf Shaman's Balmora rooftop apartments to even a few buildings from Delaire Balmora, and of course Shabby Balmora Labour Town by Lucifer and Dimnuisance. Taken as a whole, this is simply just a breathtaking overhaul and expansion of Balmora, with verticality delights and integrated support for Rocky West Gash, providing a simply visually stunning capital for Great House Laloon. But this overhaul isn't just limited to the exteriors. Oh no, it also covers the interiors. Or, well, most of them anyway. As this mod just fully integrates Lucifer's Aube more redecorated, with a few tweaks. We'll take a look at just some of these newly overhauled interiors just right here. Just enough to give you an idea of what to expect. Starting with the Mages and Fighters Guilds. Some of this will naturally look a little familiar, we have showcased both Lucifer's more redecorated and guilds expanded before. And aside from the occasional tweak just here and there, these are visually pretty similar. Taking a look at just a few other interiors, the Lucky Lockup Tavern has been completely redesigned, based on the mod Livelier Lucky Lockup. Which, I do appreciate the alliteration there, but, seriously, try saying that 3 times fast. That name is not as easy to say as you might think. But, anyway, this adds a new element of verticality, an upper-level mezzanine that looks down upon the main floor and the performance stage. Likewise, the 8 plates has also seen a redesign, based on the mod even seedier 8 plates, which just adds a wide-open dining area with plenty of tables and chairs. Just enough space for the residents of Balmora to come have a meal, or maybe a drink. And, like with the Lucky Lockup, there's an upper-level mezzanine here that looks down upon the main floor. Again, just adding that charming little bit of interior verticality to this lovely space. Now, we're not going to look at every single interior, that would take all day. But I do want to highlight just a couple of the other major ones, including the Hlaalu Council Manor, which contains elements of both Callantes Do Get to the High Town Very Often, and Hlaalu Council Manor Overhaul by Random Pal. The main floor of the Council Manor now contains a large open space, with divided off meeting halls, and a large fountain towards the back. Well, a new tower, originally found in Callantes mod, with a rather long and verticality-inducing staircase, will lead you up to the Hlaalu Treasury Vault, where the Hlaalu just keep some of their precious wealth. Also worth noting here is an expansion and overhaul for the Morag Tong Guildhall, which now includes expanded quarters and a central dome, just to match the new domed appearance of the exterior. There's also new interiors, like the aforementioned tavern from Marne de Boeuf, a few new shops, and of course the interiors from Balmora Rooftop Apartments. Notably, this mod doesn't actually do much to the Balmora Council Club, or the Southwall Corner Club, and has compatibility patches for Atmospheric Southwall, and also Durgarbol's House Reclaimed. And, just speaking of patches, I do want to highlight some of the other mods that have out-of-the-box support with Odai, Lifeblood of Balmora. Now, you have already seen that Odai, Lifeblood of Balmora has patches from Archon's Bell Towers and Balmora to be done. Just what with all the video footage we've shown so far. But it also has support for Balmora Outskirts, Stoneflower Trading Post by Kaya Corel and Ruffin Van Gaal. And this just blends in rather beautifully with the rest of Odai, Lifeblood of Balmora. The outskirts feel like a natural extension of the city's surrounding infrastructure, and the trading post is now perched with a scenic view of the source of the Odai. Likewise, this mod also has a patch for Hala Odai, the 2022 Morrowind Modding Madness mod that adds a new town to the mouth of the Odai River. This patch just blends in the town like a natural extension of the changes to the Odai River, and I would strongly recommend using Hala Odai. Besides new quests and a new dungeon, it's a scenic waterfront town that acts as a natural expansion of House Hlaalu's domain over the trade of the Odai River. And now, one thing I do need to clarify here. You have seen Grot Morrowind Swamp Trees just here in the background. But Odai Lifeblood of Balmora will conflict with Grot Morrowind Swamp Trees. I've made just a rather hasty and rough edit, removing two of the swamp trees that were blocking the Odai River, just to use as a makeshift patch. You'll find a link to that patch just right down below, but I must stress it is a rough edit, and it's based on an outdated version of Grot Morrowind Swamp Trees. So I would just recommend, maybe waiting for an official patch, should one ever be released. Otherwise, it's worth noting that Odai Lifeblood of Balmora incorporates the landscape overhaul of the Ashen Divide, which overhauls that little slice of the Ashlands dividing the Bitter Coast between Cedonine and Hala-Own. And also, obviously, this includes an edited Rocky West Gash around specifically the city of Balmora. Now, it does not include the entirety of the Rocky West Gash though. You will still need one of the other Rocky West Gash mods for just the rest of the West Gash region. Now, this is also compatible with Superior Shock Egg Mine by Dreadnought VCN. And, in fact, Odai Lifeblood of Balmora just arguably enhances that mod by overhauling the exterior of the egg mine, with new cranes, a new rail track, and a proper dock, where Quama eggs can be carted on board and shipped down the Odai River to the NSC or up to Balmora proper. There's even a new shack for the mining overseer. Finally, just one last thing I'd like to point out, Odai Lifeblood of Balmora is compatible with Delaria Imperial Forts, and specifically Fort Moonmoth, as well as the more recent landscape overhaul Ascadia Land of Pilgrimage, released just in January. And it should also be compatible with just any Rethan Manor overhauls that don't make any landscape edits, which I believe is mostly just Rethan Redivis. Resplendent Rethan and Rethan Estate will definitely conflict, but interior-only overhauls should be fine. Now, it is worth noting that there are just a ton of compatibility patches already out there for Odai Lifeblood of Balmora. And you can find a link to the Odai Lifeblood of Balmora patch project just right down below. Chances are pretty good that most of the mods that you might be concerned about have already been patched. But with all that said and done, Odai Lifeblood of Balmora is simply a marvel of a mod. A breathtakingly gorgeous transformation of both Balmora and its environs. It does and covers a lot, which we've hopefully just done an adequate job of showcasing here. I know this has been a bit of a long one, that there's a lot to see with this mod. And I do think it might just currently be the ultimate overhaul for Balmora. It certainly has its fair share of verticality. That's pretty much it for today, though. We'll be taking a look at another just major landscape overhaul in the next few weeks, with Ascadia Land of Pilgrimage, which, as previously mentioned, is compatible with Odai Lifeblood of Balmora, so just stay tuned for that one. And in the meantime, I would just like to take a moment to thank our patrons for making this video possible, including Ascetic JMac, Alderoth, Alexos, Area 5, /Symbolmean, Billy Fighter, Cotta Canterbury, Kiwi, Cyprinius, Danae, Deliant, Danina, Dennis418, Exovian, Yame Alcazo Castornau, Julian, Corridor, Langastier, Lord Brenny, Macbone, Melchior Dog, Mercury Bard, Merlord, Michael, Mr. the Joshman, Null Cascade, Old Navy Twidget, Operator Jack, or Mr. Bard, Port Hughes, Povio Holo, Raven Talon, Arfuso, Rissa Leaf, Sand Gentleman, Shadowbanner Swine, Shooter, Soga Cat, Stiff Kitten, Telvani with 8,000 nicknames, Tazrel, Two-Timing Trauma Root, Tyra Rain, Voot Tot, and X-Zero Fox. If you'd like to join them, check out our rewards including early access, behind-the-scenes content, access to polls, and video previews. Visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/MarwinModding. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay safe, stay healthy, happy modding, and I'll see you all next time.